So I'm really excited here to talk with you guys today about how to use analytics to optimize your product and business. Real quick about my background so you know kind of where I'm coming from. I started out with an engineering background, and I knew I wanted to basically leverage that technical background with a business background. So I moved out here to go to business school at Stanford. And when I was at Stanford, that's when I learned about this awesome thing called product management. I said, that's what I want to do. And I asked everybody, where's the best place to do product management, to learn it? And they said, Intuit. And so I came here right after business school, and it was a great 5 years. I learned a ton. So I highly recommend that. I was actually a leader here. I worked on Quicken, got promoted. It was a great 5 years. And then after Intuit, I worked at startups. I worked at a couple of startups as a product leader. Then I started my own startup. So I've been a CEO and co-founder of a startup as well. And then what I do these days, and I've been doing it for a while, is consulting. So I help companies, either startups or established companies, with product management. Oftentimes I'll be an interim VP of product for early stage, like Box was a client of mine back in 2007. Medallia, One Medical Group, a lot of companies in the Bay Area. And I started this group over 3.5 years ago because I'm just really passionate about sharing best practices and bringing in the top speakers and having people compare notes. And that's my Twitter handle, and I post my stuff on my website, dan-olsen.com. So my book, if any of you have read it, it's really a guide on how to achieve product market fit. And product market fit is basically, it actually was coined by Mark Andreessen back in 2007. Mark Andreessen, the Netscape guy, right, who's now a VC. In a post he called The Only Thing That Matters in 2007, and it wasn't really used a whole lot. And then with the lean startup movement, it became much more popular and people use it a lot. And anytime you have a big movement, there's all these buzzwords, right, like MVP, pivot, product market fit. The funny thing about product market fit is people talk about it in a very simplistic way. It's like, oh, startup, Box succeeded because they had product market fit. Startup X sadly failed because they did not have product market fit, right? So they talk about it like this true or false condition of existence. But there's not really a lot of guidance on how to achieve it. And so that's why I wrote this book. And one of the things that I see is people sharing advice. They get advice, you get all this advice from other people that may not apply to where you're at. And so the way I think about product market fit is actually in 3 phases. Like when you're building your product, there's 3 phases. There's before product market fit. And within that, we have before your product's even live, right? Who's in this phase right now? Who's working on their product and it's not live yet? So we got a couple people, right? So that's, you obviously don't have product market fit if your product's not live yet. The next is, okay, we've launched our product, but let's be honest, even if we've done a good job, we still don't have the level of product market fit that we want. And then if you're lucky, you get to phase 3, you iterate, and you get to the point where you actually have product market fit, which is phase 3. So who's in phase 2? All right, who's in phase 3? It's like pour on the gasoline, let's go, we have product market fit. Okay, great, all right, that's good. Great. And so usually there's a curve like this, whether it's customers, you can think of number of customers or revenue from 0 to lots, whatever that means for your space. And the idea is, obviously before you launch, you don't have any customers revenue, and then you start to grow. And then once you have product market fit is really where it starts to accelerate. And as I mentioned, part of the problem is you may hear some advice from some entrepreneur or someone that's in this zone, but you're over here in this phase. It doesn't really make sense. So I like to kind of demystify that. So in each of these phases, the main goal that you have is actually quite different. So in phase 1, your goal is really to test your hypotheses and gain confidence before you build. So that if you're going to invest in building, you have a higher degree of confidence that what you're building is going to be valuable. And the methods that you use there are mainly qualitative, in my opinion. It's a lot about getting to know your users, understanding what their needs are, which I talk a lot about in my book. The second one, in phase 2, our goal now is to improve the product market fit. We've got our product out there in the market, and we just want to talk to customers and improve it. This is a mix of both qualitative and quantitative. The other thing is until you launch your product, you can't really do quantitative because it's not like you have thousands of customers using your product. But once you launch, you can. And then in phase 3, your main goal is growth, right? You've got product market fit and your goal is growth. And this is where the tools are mainly quantitative. You still should do qualitative as well, but you're really relying a lot on quantitative, right? So again, I'd ask people, we already went through which phase everybody's in, so we have a good split here between the 3 phases. But that's basically why I wrote the book. As I said, I'm going to give away a couple copies. I already gave you guys the Twitter handles and hashtags that are on the walls if you want to try to do that. But there's a real fundamental difference between quantitative and qualitative learning. When you do quantitative, basically, you're trying to get like a large sample size and try to get statistically significant results. You actually don't care what any one user is doing or not doing, or you don't really care about what they're just like a drop in the ocean. You want to get like millions of data points or thousands of data points and figure out like, okay, great, 12.6% of people are doing this or not, right? And so it's really all about like analytics and logic. And I like to give each of these approaches like a face or a name. So who's the master of like analytics and logic? Fictional character. Spock is, that's right. Spock is the quantitative guy, right? He's the quantitative guy. Now, qualitative is very different, right? Qualitative, I recommend that you actually, like in the early days in phase 1, you just sit down one-on-one with each of your prospective customers and really understand, get to know what's important to them, what matters to them, what makes them tick, right? And that's, so each actually does matter to what each person says then, right? Obviously you want to look for patterns across them, but it's not like you're ever going to have statistical significance. It's just not going to happen. I gave a talk a year ago, and I gave the talk on the qualitative side for phase 1, and at the end of it, somebody asked, well, Dan, you only talk to 10 people per wave, right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, that's not statistically significant. I'm like, you're right. How many should we talk to? She's like, 1,000. So then I was like, are you sure that's enough? She's like, no, you're right, 10,000. She's like, 10,000. So I was just like egging her on, right? I probably could have got her to say 100,000 as well. I was like, okay, great. How long would it take to do 10,000 one-on-one customer interviews? Right? About 10,000 hours it would take. It's not even feasible, right? So you can't prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, but it's important, especially in phase 1. And so again, I like to give these a face or a name. So who's the master of like sitting down with someone one-on-one and really getting to know them and what makes them tick and what they care about? Oprah, that's right, so Oprah. So there's the Oprah technique and there's the Spock technique. And a lot of my book is about phase 1 and phase 2, which is more Oprah. Phase 1 is definitely more Oprah. Ellen, sure. Someone bring up Barbara Walters as someone else to bring up, sure. And the reality is, some people might have a natural preference. Some of you in the room may know that you have a preference for one or the other, right? I know a lot of people with a quantitative background. I have a quantitative background. I love numbers. The idea of proving something beyond a shadow of a doubt sounds awesome. Can't always do it, though, when you're building a new product. And it's not an argument over which one's better. They're both valuable, and the reality is they complement each other, right? So quantitative tells you what are people doing, what are they not doing, how many are doing it, right? But you have no idea why. You may know that 12% of people are clicking, registering for your product. You have no idea why they are, and you have no idea why the people that aren't registering aren't. Qualitative tells you the why, but you don't necessarily know precisely what percentage of people are doing it for whichever reason, right? But they're both complementary. And you'll see in a couple of examples I share, you'll start with one and then you'll go back to the other. That's really how you get a lot of good insight. So on the qualitative side, and as far as a model for achieving product market fit, this is the product market fit pyramid, which I turned into the lean product process. So these are the 6 steps. I'm not going to go into this, but this is basically the foundation of a lot of the book, where you basically get clear on your target customer and your underserved needs, which is the market, right? And you don't really control that. You can pick what you want to target. And then you as a product team, you need to basically form hypotheses on the top 3 product layers: value proposition, which is which benefits are we going to address, how are they going to be better, how are we going to do so in a way that's better and different than the competition. Feature set, what's the functionality that's going to convey those benefits to the customer. That's where MVP comes in, so we don't overbuild. And then UX design, which is what brings the features to life for the customers. And then once you have a UX prototype or a live product, then you can go and close the loop and test it. So that's the foundation of it. That's, again, more of an Oprah process. So today we're going to get our Spock on, and we're going to talk about the analytics stuff. So this is basically chapters 13 and 14 from my book. So it's for phase 3 pretty much, right? You can use it a little bit in phase 2. But I have a process here as well for the Spock side, which is what I call the lean product analytics process. So I want to walk you guys through that. It starts out by identifying what your metrics are, right? And there's kind of like a maturity model here. Maybe you work at a company where they know what their metrics are. They're tracking them very detailed. But you may be another company that isn't tracking them or doesn't have an idea what they are. So you got to start out with what are the metrics. And then what you want to do is measure where are we today. Measure the baseline, what I call the baseline values. Where are we today? And this is really important. And then once you have baseline values for your metrics, then you can look across the metrics and say, okay, as a team, which metric do we think offers the best opportunity here? Which one offers the highest ROI or the biggest upside potential? Because you want to pick which one we want to focus on, right? And so this is all happening at the global product or business level. And then what we want to do is pick that top metric and say, okay, we think that conversion rate is the top metric for us to focus on right now. So you're going to pick that metric. And then you go into a metric-specific optimization loop, where you basically, okay, great, we're going to focus on conversion rate. let's as a team brainstorm what are all our different ideas for how we can improve conversion rate. And then basically decide as a team which is the highest ROI, go design and implement it, and then launch it and see how the metric changes. And you hope the metric goes up and to the right, but it doesn't always do that. But even if it doesn't improve, you've gained something because you've learned, right? You tried it, you tested a hypothesis, it didn't work. You're going to learn and iterate and go through this loop. And eventually you'll find ways to move the needle on that metric. And you'll find a couple of different ways. And after a while, you'll start to realize, gosh, it's getting harder and harder to improve this metric. You'll hit diminishing returns. And at some point, it'll make sense to say, okay, great, you know what? We've pretty much optimized conversion rate as much as it makes sense. Let's go back and look at the other metrics that we haven't worked on yet and figure out which one offers the next biggest opportunity to improve. So that's kind of lean product analytics process. I'm going to share a couple examples of applying it from my work experience. Now, the other thing is a lot of times people don't know where to start with metrics, so they don't have a framework. How to think about metrics. And my friend Dave McClure actually created a while ago a metric framework called Startup Metric for Pirates, or R. Has anybody heard of this before? So the beauty of this framework is it's a high-level framework that applies to any business. So that's the cool thing. It has universal applicability, right? Now let me walk you through. It's called R and Startup Metric because that's the acronym of the 5 different metrics that we talk about. The first is acquisition. So acquisition means basically, we've got our product, we've got our website, say, how do we make people aware of it and get them to come and check it out and decide if they want to be customers or not? That's what acquisitions are, getting what we call prospects to visit the site, right? Getting someone who doesn't know about your product to get to your site, basically. That's acquisition. The second one is activation. It's like, great, we got them to our site. What percentage are we actually converting into customers? Whatever your definition of customer is. It could be a registration. It could be paying with a credit card. It could be just giving an email address, whatever it is. You have to decide what that conversion action is. This is also called conversion. But if it was conversion, it would spell out ACR. It wouldn't say R. It wouldn't work quite as well. So we call this activation. Now, once they become a customer, they start using your product, right? And then hopefully they keep using your product. And that's where retention comes in, As we know, not every customer comes back and keeps using your product. So retention is the first R here. And then referral is the second R. And this basically means, hey, by virtue of people using our product, we're getting new prospects. It could be just word of mouth, like people loving your product so much that they tell their friends. Or it could be some digital viral loop like a social networking product or something like that. But the whole point is, by virtue of your customers using your product, you're getting new prospects. And this is the one, out of all the 5, this is the one that varies the most. Like if you're in some social networking space, it's going to be really important. If you're in some like gaming space where it needs virality to grow, this could be important. If you're in a B2B enterprise space, it's not like one Fortune 100 CMO is going to go, hey buddy, you should really check out the software, it's cool. Be my friend on Salesforce or something, right? So it may not, that one may vary the most, right? But the other ones definitely apply. And then finally there's revenue, right? By virtue of people using your product, you're somehow generating revenue. Either they're paying you directly or you're monetizing it in some other way. Right, so that's why it's called R. And the whole point is, you guys see how this applies to any business, right? It's just great. That's the beauty of this framework. It's just pretty simple. The whole point is for you to think about your business and look at these and say, well, where are we today? Which one of these should we be focusing? Which one offers the highest ROI and makes the most sense to optimize? So you want to focus on the right metric at the right time. And that's what I call in the book the metric that matters most. Like for right now, where we are with our business, based on what we know, we have an opinion about which of these metrics matters the most that we should focus on, right? So it's like, what is your metric that matters? So think about just for a second, think about your business, and where you guys are today and which of these is the most important. Who would say acquisition is the most important for their business right now? Raise your hands. Yeah, a few people. Who would say activation or conversion is the most important thing right now? Okay. Who would say retention is the most important thing right now? Who would say referral? A couple people. And then who would say revenue? Okay, great. So see, everyone's got different answers here. So let's simplify it. Let's talk about a specific case, a theoretical case. Say we had a new product that we just launched, and we narrowed it down to these 2 things: acquisition, conversion, retention. It's not like there's always a right answer, but there's a generally prevailing wisdom about which order it makes sense to do these in, to optimize these in, right? So who thinks we should, if you had a new product, the first thing you'd want to focus on optimizing is acquisition? Okay, who thinks we should focus on conversion first? And who thinks we should focus on retention first? And who didn't vote? All right, cool. So this is, if you guys heard of the leaky bucket metaphor. So actually, for a talk, I created some pictures, so I want to share this. So in general, basically, let's go through and define each of these. So the metaphor that I like to use is, here's conversion. Okay, so conversion is basically, imagine a kid with a water hose and he's spraying some water, and some of it's getting in the bucket. So prospective customers, the water is your prospective customers. The percentage that actually gets in the bucket are the ones that you capture as customers. That's conversion rate. Okay, that's a way to think about it, right? Because you have to fill the bucket up somehow. This is what great conversion rate looks like. All the water goes in the bucket, right? That's what great conversion looks like. Acquisition is how much water are you spraying? Do you have a little trickle like this, or do you have like great acquisition like this? That's acquisition. And then the final part of the metaphor is retention. Okay, it's all going into this bucket. What percentage of customers are we keeping in there over time versus are leaking out? Right? And great retention looks like this. Right? So given that metaphor, most people would say, hey, if we've got a really leaky bucket, it doesn't make sense to go and acquire a bunch of customers because they're all just going to leak out. Like, usually acquisition, it takes time at a minimum. Usually it takes money. So it's like you're going to go, and then all of the people you just spent all that time and money on are going to leak out of your bucket. So most people think it makes sense to start with retention first to make sure, your bucket's going to leak no matter what. We all lose customers. The question is how badly is it leaking, and let's get it to a point where we're happy. And the next thing then is conversion. Like if your aim with that hose isn't that good, again, you can spend a lot of money. And so usually conversion is the second thing that people optimize. So that, okay, our bucket's not that leaky, and we know how to convert people and get all the water into the bucket. And then now we can more confidently go and spend money and time on acquisition because we know it's going to have a ROI. So that's not true for every situation, but in general, that's a common way that people optimize those three metrics. The other question on that is, say we launched our new product, there's a lot of different metrics you could track. And I asked if we wanted to measure product market fit specifically for our new product, what metric would you track? I'd love to hear people's ideas on what metric they track. Yeah? Retention. Okay, what else?
Depends on the product.
Depends on the product. Yeah, well, pick a product, and what would you measure?
If it's like a social,
yeah.
It would be more like conversion.
Okay.
Am I getting?
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Anybody else? Anything else?
How happy your user is.
How happy you are. And what's the happiness units?
Retention.
How big their smile is? Mm-hmm. Like customer satisfaction, like a survey or something?
Yeah, like your customer was saying, I love it.
I love it.
Share it with my friends.
Okay. Does anyone know a question where we ask people and track where you say, would you share it with your friends?
Yes.
Net Promoter Score. Are you familiar with Net Promoter Score? So there's a very specific question that says, hey, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend this to a friend or colleague? So yeah, if they're happy, that would be good. So Net Promoter Score, yeah. Anything else?
How about revenue?
I was going to say, anybody care about money? Yeah, so revenue, right? So, there's not, even here, we don't have a consensus on what it would be for product market fit, right? And they're all valid, and they're all kind of correlated. Obviously, if your customers are happier, you're probably generating more revenue. You probably have better retention. The interesting thing about NPS is, well, let's get into this. This is the next slide. Good transition. So this is a framework from my friend Christian Rohr. He's a talented design leader. And what he does is he kind of categorized the different research or learning methods that you have. And so I mentioned, SPOC, quantitative, and Oprah, qualitative. There's another important dimension that he clarifies, which is attitudinal versus behavioral. Attitudinal is what people say, and behavioral is what people do. And as we know, a lot of times people may say something, but their behavior could be different. So NPS, is that behavioral or attitudinal? It's attitudinal. It's like, yeah, I would theoretically, or I could see myself recommending a friend. Well, did they actually do it or not? Right? So that's an interesting one. But let me illustrate the four of these. So basically in the bottom left, we have qualitative, attitudinal. That's basically like if you're doing customer discovery interviews and asking people what's important to them, what products they use today, what do you like, right? They're just talking to them to try to get to know them better and understand their needs better. That's basically qualitative, attitudinal. Qualitative behavioral, like formal usability testing would be up here. You're trying to watch them use the product. So it's not them saying what they would do if they use the product. They're actually using the product in front of you, right? You can see how they use it. And it's qualitative because it's not like you're doing it for 1,000 people and coming up with the average. You're doing a little session. The reality is anytime you talk to customers, you're going to get a mix. Even if you're doing usability tests, you're going to get some attitudes and opinions in there as well. Bottom right, we have quantitative. So attitudinal but quantitative. Anybody know what's down there? You're asking people their opinions, but you're getting a lot of people's surveys. That's right, surveys are here, right? And NPS is a survey where you ask people 0 to 10, and the format of the question is very structured. Now in the book, I talk a lot about, and a lot of kind of product experts tell people to be careful with surveys because it's really easy to misuse surveys. I was very fortunate when I worked here at Intuit. We had like a PhD in market research in our team, and so she taught me the pitfalls, like the do's and don'ts of surveys, and so I learned proper survey design here from her. But it's really easy. Like if I wanted to, you want to have this product get approved? Great, I'll write the survey for you, and we'll get everybody to love it. Give us the answers we want. You want this thing to get killed? I'll write it a certain way, right? Surveys are really really easy to mess up. In fact, I got a survey from Uber. On my phone, I opened the app like a while ago, and it came up and it said, it said, would you like to do market research? I'm like, yeah, I want to see what they're going to ask. This is great. It's a product that I use. Let's see what they do. The first question was, it showed 5 reasons like why you would use the product, and said, please rank order your 5 reasons. And I looked at the list of 5, and my reason wasn't even on the list. That's one of the flaws with surveys. How do you even know what to put in there, right? And so that kind of stuff. So anyway, surveys are easy to misuse. That's why NPS is so popular. You can't get it wrong. It's one question. They're very formulaic about how you ask it. So you can't go off the guardrails, basically. Finally, in the upper right, we have quantitative behavioral. This is where product analytics live, right? So once we've launched our products and we're using Mixpanel or Google Analytics or have our own analytics, we can see, oh, hey, we had 2,000 visitors yesterday, 500 users used this feature. Our conversion rate was this, right? We can do that. And then we can also do A/B testing where we roll out 2 or more different versions of something and compare the performance differences between them. So anyway, this is a broader framework. Or if you like this idea, go check his out. He has like 22 different research methodologies there. But back to our discussion about, hey, if you're measuring product market fit, I mentioned how NPS is good, but it's attitudinal, it's not necessarily behavioral. So my goal would be to try to find a behavioral measure that we could really have more confidence in. Sometimes if it's hard to measure certain things, NPS is great because it's really easy to measure. But for me, I like retention rate because what that means basically is somebody came, because I can do a really good job on a landing page and sell you some snake oil and get you to, oh, this is going to be an amazing product. And then you sign up and we make it super easy to sign up. And then you get in there and you use the product. If you don't like it, you're not going to come back and use it. But if you come in and you like it and you're like, oh my gosh, this really meets my needs, I see how it's better than the other products that I've used, you're going to come back, right? So fundamentally, retention rate is just what percentage of people decide to come back over time. And so for me, that's a real behavioral, and it's a quantitative measure because if you track it a certain way, we're actually going to get a number that shows us what percentage of people coming back over time. So it's very powerful. So for me, that's the one metric I would pick. Let me talk a little bit more about retention rate. As I mentioned, it tracks what percentage of customers are still active over time, usually shown as a curve, where on the y-axis you have percentage of users returning. You start out with 100%, and you see like how many come back. And then on the x-axis you have time, like days since that customer. So it's a funny metric. It's not like calendar time, but for each user, you keep track of how many days or weeks since they first used your site, and you see what percentage come back. Right? And so this curve, it's pretty brutal. You see, it doesn't even go to 100%. Why is that? Well, for this product, 80% of people never used it after the first time. And this is real data from a mobile app. It's pretty brutal, right? Talk about a leaky bucket. It's like, okay, we haven't put all this time and effort to get people there, and then, right? And this is for a mobile app. Like say you told me a cool mobile app and I installed and I played with it for a couple minutes, and then I close it, and then I put my phone in my pocket. Am I ever going? What's the likelihood of me remembering to go back the next day and say, oh yeah, what was that app that Lydia told me about on screen 12 of my iPhone? Like, there's no way, right? That's why they're like, hey, can we please do push notifications, please? Because they want to be able to get back to you. So it's brutal. So it starts out with an initial drop, and then it decays, and then it does one of 2 things. It either goes, I've shown it here flattening out, like to an asymptote. This is about, what, like 2.5%, 3%. But it can also go to 0. And for a lot of products, or most products, it actually goes to 0. What does that mean? That means that eventually all that water you pour in the bucket, all those customers you get, maybe it takes 60 days, maybe it takes 90 days, they all leak out, right? That's what that means if it goes to 0. And usually for V1 products, it kind of goes to 0 until you iterate. When you're in phase 1 and phase 2, you're at the tail end of phase 2, that's when you kind of get to that point. Now, say you launch a product and you just start tracking this for all your customers. after you track it for a while, you're kind of throwing all of your customers into one bucket or bin to do this analysis. And if you've been around for, like, say, a year, it's like, well, our product's a lot better now than it was a year ago. So it's not really fair to keep all those old users that we lost in the same bin. What would we do? Yeah, John?
What's a good percentage of users returning for like a top app?
Hold that question. Hold that. I have some data to share with you in a minute. Yeah, and it kind of depends. The answer is it depends on your category, right? So two ways to think about it is try to benchmark with others, which can be hard to find. Secondly is compare yourself over time. And I'll answer both of those in a sec. So yeah. So the next thing is, okay, great. We don't want to throw all of our customers into one big bucket. Let's slice them up so we can kind of compare retention curves across groups. That's called cohort analysis, where each group of customers that you're looking at the retention curve of is a cohort, just a group of users. It's most commonly done by when they signed up. Let's take the people that signed up in January, and that's the January cohort. Let's look at their retention curve. Let's take the people in February and call that the February cohort. Look at their retention curve. So it's usually done by when they signed up, but it doesn't have to be. It could be based on acquisition channel. It could be based on segmentation, anything like that. But here's what it would look like if you had 3 cohorts, say. So again, we have percentage of users returning, going up to 100%. And this time we have weeks and signed up instead of days. And there are 3 cohorts here. There's blue. Cohort A is blue diamonds. Cohort B is red squares. Cohort C is green triangles. Imagine you're the PM for this product. Which cohort curve? Think about which cohort curve you would rather have as your cohort curve. Raise your hand if you would like cohort A as your cohort curve. Okay, raise your hand if you would like cohort B as your cohort curve. Raise your hand if you like cohort C as your retention. Did you guys have a secret meeting before I came in? Okay, when he puts it up, we're all going to say C. Do you have a PhD in retention that I didn't know about? No. We just started talking about this. All your brains know. Why do you guys like cohort C so much? Highest, I know. Look, this one's the highest. It's right here. It's blue. Come on, the blue is the highest. Huh? These drop off? Why is it that your brain liked that one so much?
Highest retention over time.
Yeah, the long term, right? Most people, it's like, yeah, I could be like, yeah, well, look at this, start out so strong. It doesn't really matter, right? What matters is the end of this curve, right? So even though I started talking with you guys about it, your brains already know like what that basically means. And so what's funny is when I give my talk, the Oprah talk, yeah.
Well, it's not really where they end up, right? It's the lifetime value of that customer.
Well, that's from an economic standpoint. This is just product market fit, right? So yeah. And I talk about that in the book. I don't have time to talk about it in the talk today, but definitely, yeah. But part of one of the values that goes into lifetime value is how long does your average customer stay with you, which is directly related to retention rate, right? So yeah. So when I give my main talk about how to achieve product market fit for phases 1 and 2, I get that question of like, well, how do you really know you have product market fit? Yeah, I know you're talking to groups of 5 to 8 people and things are getting better, but how do you really know? Like the Spock heads are like, Dan, how do you really know? How do you prove beyond a shadow of a doubt? So for those people, I tell them, okay, you want a real quantitative behavioral measure of product market fit? It's this. It's where that curve comes out. Wherever it flattens out, that is a quantitative measure of product market fit. The higher it is, the more product market fit you have. The lower it is, if it goes to 0, you don't have product market fit, right? And then it's just a question. So for those people that are seeking a real quantitative measure, that's it. And so what you want to do over time is actually see it improve over time, right? So say we had a startup and we launched our rough MVP V1 24 months ago. And this was the retention rate that we had. Like, after 12 months, we were only holding on to like 5% of our users. Well, in the next 6 months, we listened to our customers, we fixed the bugs, we made it easier to use, we added features, right? What we'd want to see is that curve move up over time, right? And that would mean we have better product market fit. And say in the next 6 months after that, we continue to improve the product, right? And really got to know our users and made it better. That's what you want to see, is you want to see that curve going up over time, right? And to back this up with real empirical data, to get to your question, John, here's real data from the Android App Store. And the cohorts that they did here is they took, all right, let's take the top 10 apps and put them in a cohort. Let's take the next 50 and put them in a cohort, next 100, next 5,000. You can see it proves out exactly what I'm saying. The top apps, the best apps, are the ones that have the highest terminal value of retention rate, right? This is 60, that's pretty darn good. And then it drops down significantly as you go down. So, some questions? Yeah?
You got me thinking on the first one you put up.
initial return rate wasn't correlated with retention rate.
Final.
That was an odd behavior.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, if you start out higher, doesn't mean you end higher. Yeah.
I mean, this, okay.
Yeah, you'll see this when you do real world retention curves. You'll see them crisscross like that.
I've never been able to do it any other way than that. Like, if we if we get them to retain, it usually means they actually came back initially as well, you know. But
Are you tracking it over time? I mean, because it'll keep dropping.
no, I'm able to do that. If you go back to the previous one,
This one?
yeah, I'm never able to do that. Where it's like I can't, because you've got in cohort A,
Yeah.
you've got a higher return
Starts out higher.
initially,
Yeah.
right, 50%,
Uh-huh.
but they drop off in a steeper curve.
That's right. That's right.
In cohort, you know,
Uh-huh.
and it's it's just they're not correlated. You know what I mean? They don't all shift up.
They do not. Yeah, they don't go in lockstep, right? And this how you know how this happens? This is typically what happens is you might have some low quality channel where you get people, but then they eventually churn at a higher rate than people that are really a good fit. So this kind of gets into customer segmentation as well. When you get the product market fit, there's the market piece. You're trying to make the product good, but there's also the market part of the market fit as well. Another question? Yeah.
So how does the product market fit work with agile methodologies and iteration? Because like this takes a long time to figure out whether we have market
Sure.
or not, but also
Sure.
most startups you want to iterate like on a weekly basis. So
Sure.
any thoughts on that?
I mean, you can measure it weekly. It might be noisier. I just try to pick 6-month intervals for this just to kind of show clear things. It gets messy. You know, I have these nice simple examples with 3 cohort curves. The second you have like 6 or more, it gets very, very, it gets crazy busy. So it gets tough to measure. It's tough to look at visually. Yes?
What's the minimum percentage of users that need to come back for you to confidently say that you have product market fit?
3.6%. It just depends. It just depends, right? So if it's 0, you definitely don't have it, right? And then
I understand it's different for different apps.
it is, yeah.
But like, you know, in general, like is there a ballpark?
There's not really, I don't think there really, I mean, this is your benchmark right here. It's like, are you a top 10 app or are you a, next 5,000 app, right? And if we kept going, they would keep moving down, right? So it's kind of like a percentile score, like are you in the top 10%, are you in the top 30%? So it just kind of depends. The other thing is, another part of retention is how frequently people use it as well, right? So if there's an app you're using every day, it might have a higher retention rate than something you only do once a year or something, right? So it can be harder. So typically I get questions from B2B people is like, we do 3-year contract renewals. We can't measure this. But it's the same, the renewal rate idea is still the same. And it really is a measure like of people using it. So here's the deal. You may have 3-year contract renewals, but if only 5% of the, 2% of the people are actually using it, then you're probably not going to renew it, right? It's like engagement and usage. That's what retention is measuring, basically, is engagement and usage of it. Yes?
Do I get another question?
Sure.
The question is like, how do you know what cohorts to pick, right? Because I mean, sure, it can be based on time, it can be based on channel, but what are some of the other interesting cohorts that?
I mean, I think you should look at those and see what makes a difference, what actually makes a difference in the retention rate. I mean, usually over time makes a difference because as you're adding value and fixing bugs and getting to know your market and customers better is a good way to do it. Other ways is market segmentation. So if you're tackling, say you're tackling SMB, but you're tackling 4 different verticals, you might look at the verticals. Acquisition channels, like literally down to the site. Oh, we're advertising on this site versus this site. Which one's getting us higher quality people that are really a fit for our product? That would be some good ways to do it. All right, let's move on. So basically, we want to make sure we have product market fit, make sure we don't have a leaky bucket. Retention curves and cohort analysis are the tool that we use. Once we get to the point where our bucket isn't leaky and we've kind of used the high-level startup metric for Pirates R framework, at some point you're going to want to optimize the specifics of your business, right? The cool thing about the startup metric for Pirates is it applies to every business, but it's not specific to any particular revenue model, right? And so at some point, you're going to want to optimize your particular revenue model. And the thing I talk about, the framework that I use here is what I call the equation of your business. I used to be a quantitative guy, so if I want to optimize something, I want to be able to express it like as an equation, right? And so you may be wondering, well, what equation can I use for my business? The one equation you can always start out with, it's too high level, but you can start with it and break it down from there, is profit equals revenue minus cost. And then, for most tech companies, the marginal revenue becomes much higher than the marginal cost. Marginal cost decreases a lot. So this often is mainly an exercise in optimizing revenue. Now, in your particular case, cost may be important, but But it's usually about, great, how can we break down revenue in a way that makes sense for our business model so that we as a team can think about it and talk about it and agree on what we're going to focus on, right? So I like to do it for an advertising business model. So an advertising business model, you have people coming to your site. Think of any news or content site. People come to your site, and by virtue of them being there, we show ads, and that's how we make our money, right? So again, it wouldn't be helpful to say, let's try to grow revenue. It's not really actionable. We're going to peel the onion and break this down. So we're going to break revenue into, well, great, how many people came this month? You can think about it on a given time period, month, week, day, year, whatever you want, quarter. Great, how many people came and visited us during that month? And then how much was the average that we made revenue per visitor, right? You may have heard the term ARPU, average revenue per user. That's kind of the same thing. So you're breaking down how many people did we have times how much did we make on average per person. Then we can take the average revenue per visitor and break it down. Well, how do we make money? Well, we make an impression, like how many impressions did each visitor generate, ad impressions, times what is our effective CPM, right? That's how much money we're making. And it's got a factor of 1,000 in there, so we just put the 1,000 factor in there. Right? And then we can break down, well, great, how do we know, can we break down how many impressions a visitor does in a given month, the average visitor, how many ad impressions they generate in a given month? We can break it down. We can say, well, great, well, how many times did they come? How many sessions or visits did they come during the month? Was it 1 or 3? And each visit that they came on average, how many page views did they generate? And in general, for each page view, how many impressions on average did we have? Right? So that's a way to break it down and get specific. Back on the users, it's always beneficial to distinguish between new visitors or users in that time period. So who just came for the first time and became a customer or visitor that month, plus who returned, like who was already a customer from before but chose to come back again. It's always beneficial to do that. And then say we had some kind of viral loop in our product. There could be invited visitors versus uninvited, and then we could break down invited into typical viral loop metrics, right? So we started out with revenue, but we broke it down, and now we as a team can say, great, do we think we should focus on this, improving this, or this, or this, or what? What should we focus on as a team, right? Say we all had, we all worked at some content website. How might we increase visitors per visitor? How do we get them, say they're coming 3 times a month. How do we get them to come 4 times a month on average?
New content, exclusive offers.
New content. Email marketing, right? It's like, hey, I've got these great, you haven't been to the site in a while. Check out these great articles you're missing that I think you'll like, right? That's why you get those emails, to get you to come back, right? That's how we would drive that. So if we thought this was important, and by the way, this is all just one equation. We could write it all out longhand. It's just a bunch of multiplication going on, right? And so if we grow this metric by 10%, it grows revenue by 10%. So we can quantify exactly the impact on revenue. How about if we wanted to improve page views for visit? If we want to increase that, how would we increase that? Breadcrumbs. Links to other articles, yeah. Do you guys ever go to the sites where there's a top 10 list and they put 1 item per page and they make you click through? That's what they were doing. That's what they were doing. They said, you know what, we want to, instead of putting it all in one article, let's chop it up so we get more page views. That's what they were doing right there, right? And then finally, impressions per page view. How would you increase impressions per page view? More ads per page. Instead of 2 ads per page, put 3, 4, slap them on there, right? That's what you do. Right? And if you did that, eventually if you push this up, then your returning visitor rate might go down a little bit, right? So, but anyway. But that's the idea, is for your business, right, is figure out what's the way to peel the onion and figure out what are those detailed metrics that you as a team can have a discussion and say, hey, which one do we think is going to offer the highest ROI? Let me do it real quick for a subscription business model, which more people have than the advertising one probably. But again, we start with revenue minus cost. Here we say, great, let's say we have a paid service, but it has like a 30-day free trial, okay? And our revenue for the last month is just great. How many people were paying us times what was the average amount that we got per user? That's ARPU right there basically, right? And then again, on the paying users, it's always beneficial to say, great, well, who became a paying user for the first time that month, plus who was already a paying user that came back and paid us again. That's the returning user piece. It's always beneficial. I don't have a slide here, but I could show you 2 kind of active user charts that look like this. They look exactly the same, but in one case, it's a very, very leaky bucket and retention is horrible, but they're doing an amazing job on acquisition that it's kind of covering up. That fire hose is just filling up the bucket as quickly as stuff can fall out, so it looks good. In the other case, the bucket is a lot less leaky and they're just not doing as good a job on acquisition. Which one of those would you rather have? I'd rather have the second one because it's a lot less leaky bucket, right? So that's why it's important to look at return or repeat versus new. And then the repeat, so the repeat that we got in this time period, we can think about, well, great, how many did we have paying us last month, times 1 minus some cancellation or churn rate. And the interesting thing about this, all the other things we were doing was all times this, times this. Now it's times 1 minus something. And if you have a small number, if you make a change over here, because it's 1 minus factor, you can have a really big impact. For SaaS subscription businesses, you hear about how churn rate is a really important metric. That's why it's really important, is because of this factor. Back on the users, again, we have new paying users. Let's say we had some trial, we had 10,000 trial users and 10% converted. That's a way to express that. And then within the trial, let's say we had a lot of different acquisition channels, SEO, SEM, viral, for how we acquired those users. We could have it track each of those and have a conversion rate for each of those channels. So this again, now as a team, we could say, okay, do we want to focus on this conversion rate? Do we focus on the cancellation rate, right? The whole point is to do it for your business, where you get specific about your revenue model and what those levers are. And the way I like to kind of think about how to track these or think about these metrics is just basically as a daily time series. So if you think about your, each date as a row, right, and then each metric as a column, that's basically a way to think about it. Now these are what I call raw or atomic metrics, right? You're tracking these numbers, right, like these absolute numbers that are just 25, 10,000, whatever. And what tends to be more powerful than these atomic or raw metrics is ratio metrics. Let's say our CEO, okay, you're the product manager responsible for registration on your website. And your CEO came to you and said, hey Dan, how's the registration page doing? Well, it's great. We got 1,000 people signing up today, right? And he comes back the next day and he's like, how's it doing today? He's like, it's amazing. We got 10,000 today. It's amazing, right? Well, maybe we just got covered on TechCrunch or something, and that's why it's not like the page suddenly got 10 times better or anything, right? So those kind of raw metrics aren't as useful when things scale change. But if instead we track the percentage, we said, oh great, yeah, we had 1,000 people signed up, but that was like 10% of the people that showed up, and the next day it was 11%, right? So if you have a percentage, then you can compare apples to apples over time. That's the power of a ratio metric. So ratio metrics are usually more powerful. I'm not saying you shouldn't look at these, but as far as optimization goes, you should be looking at ratio metrics. Here's an example of tracking one of those ratio metrics. This is real data from a product. This is the conversion rate for registration. So it goes from 0 to 100%. It's for like 9 months. You can see the number moves around quite a bit in those 9 months, right? This is real data. Every major move in that curve is because of something we did, either on purpose or without realizing it. So, step one is let's track our baseline. We're tracking along here around 35%. By the way, I should take a step back. This product, you could use it without registering. You didn't need to actually create a username and password. You could use it without registering. Or you could register, and if you registered, there were other features, there were additional features that you could use, right? That's basically the idea. And then there was a paid tier as well. But this is just tracking the registration. We changed the messaging on like, hey, what are all the cool features you're going to get if you register that you're not getting because you're not registered? And that's what led to that improvement right there, basically, just by changing the messaging and doing a better job explaining the value prop of registering. Then from here to here, basically, I worked a lot on the usability and UI of the registration page, right? I scrutinized and said, do we really need to ask this field? Do we need to ask this question? Do we need this? Is this required or not? What can we cut? What can we trim? We also added like validation, people typing things in and checking it before they submit it, all this jazz, right? Cleaned it up. It got really nice. It was like a minimalistic registration page, and so it went up a lot. It was so minimalistic that marketing looked at it one day and said, wow, there's a lot of white space on that registration page. I'm just chomping at the bit to put some demographic questions on there. So I'm like, don't do it, don't put it on there, but they put it on there, and boom, it took a hit, right? That's what I mean by things we didn't necessarily try to do, right? And if you're not tracking it, the whole point is you're flying blind. These kind of people change UI or change features or push new code all the time. If you're not tracking it, you don't know if you suddenly just like reduce a key metric by 20 or 50%. And then finally, the last big shoot up here to like almost 90% was there was a key feature that we moved out of the non-registration bucket into registration so that you had to register, and that made that move up. So again, the point is you want to be looking at this so that you're not flying blind and you know what's going on. All right, I don't expect anybody to know what this is, but does anybody know what this is called? This object is called?
Dashboard.
Dashboard is good, pretty good. What are the things on the board? Gauge. So it's called a gauge board. Like I used to work on submarines. This is from a ship. So it's just called a gauge board because it's the board with gauges on it. And these gauges show you like the key metrics for the part of the ship that like drives the steam plan and makes the ship go, like the pressures of the steam and temperatures and things like that, right? So I think about this like your key metrics dashboard, a gauge board, and then you've got these levers, like those things in the equation of your business that you can kind of move around and see what happens. So I actually like to visualize each of those metrics as a gauge. And a gauge has a minimum value, and each of your metrics has a minimum possible value. It has a maximum possible value. This could be, for example, for a percentage metric that goes from 0 to 100, right? And then it has a current value. I couldn't find a dial that was not at 0, so I just drew it with a red arrow, right? So there's minimum, maximum, and where we are today, right? And so what you want to think about is, using the equation of your business, you know that, hey, if I move this needle this much, then it's going to have this impact on revenue, right? And so this is where we can apply an ROI, return on investment analysis. And I'm not saying it will necessarily be super precise, but at least you can run through. And what you can do is you can basically have some measure of value here. That could be revenue, if you're trying to optimize revenue. It could be customer value. And then down here, the cost is usually developer time, right? And again, you can, if you like, hey, we think this is going to grow revenue by 3,000K, then you can get really precise here. But if you're not that precise, you can still use it. So say we had two ideas, idea A and B, and the team agreed that, hey, they're going to roughly create the same amount of value, right? Either revenue growth or customer value. But idea B takes twice as much effort as idea A. Well, then idea A is going to have twice the ROI as idea B, and we should do that one first. What's common is you'll have ideas that basically offer similar ROIs, like these two ideas, right? Idea C is creating 2 units of value for 2 units of investment, and D is 4 for 4. They actually offer the same ROI. You could have a 3 for 3 or a 1 for 1 as well, right? In general, when you have these kind of situations, I recommend that you pursue the smaller scope idea first. One, it's going to get in market sooner, so you're going to see the metrics improvement sooner, the value creation sooner. And secondly, you're going to get the learning. Hey, did it work the way we expected? What are we going to learn, right, from that loop? The other thing is, as you guys that work in product development know, scope estimation error is nonlinear, right? So the chances of this thing slipping a lot more are a lot higher than this guy slipping, right? If I have something I'll be done in 5 minutes, I'll have that task done for you. It's probably not going to slip a week, right? From 5 minutes to, I'll get it to you a week later. But say we've got some 12-month-long development project. It could very well slip to 15, 16, 18 months. We've all kind of been there, right? So again, going with the smaller ideas, they'll get out sooner. There are obviously bad ideas out there, right? Low return for high investment. Nobody does these on purpose. They actually, the whole time they're doing it, they think it's up here, right? They're like, hey, we're working, it's going to be awesome, it's working. But because they don't follow the kind of principles in my book about validating your hypotheses before you go too far, you feel the pain, you feel the investment, the team's working, you feel that, then you launch it and realize, oh geez, this thing we thought was valuable, customers aren't finding valuable. Yeah, Perry?
Hey, for IDF,
yes.
Is it possible where, these days it's very valuable to collect a lot of data, but you don't really monetize it? So that could be one of them? Or
could be, yeah, sure, yeah, could be. The question is how much effort did it take? If it didn't take a lot of effort, it may not be that big a deal. So, but yeah, yeah, that could be. And then, our goal as product teams basically is to come up with these high ROI ideas that other people haven't thought about. How can we meet those needs better? How can we move the needles on these key metrics better than other people? Yeah.
So the investment seems to be, the developer weeks is something that's, over time, it's become more kind of easy to measure. The return of...
Does everyone here, engineers, do awesome estimates?
There's at least a framework to do that, right?
Sure.
But the return, until you actually build it and put it, it's kind of, I expect.
I think they're both like that, to be honest with you. You may think there's a higher uncertainty band on the value. It just depends on how good a mental model and data you have. Like Zynga does an A/B test on something, and they know that when they change that, it's going to get 12.3% revenue growth. So some people can be very precise on that. So you can be. There can be times when you're not.
Put that idea out in the market.
Yeah, but you may have done it before, and or you may have some sense of it, right? You may, and I, like, for example, I'll tell you this, like, I've optimized so many registration pages that by looking at one, I can tell you, okay, we're probably going to be able with these 3 changes to get a 15% improvement, right? So yeah, so there might be uncertainty bands on both, but there's definitely uncertainty here. Has anyone had a project major slip in a lot? Yeah, that happens too. But I hear you on this. This can be fuzzier or softer. It's estimates, right? So the team, that's why that learning loop is so critical. So the team gets better, just like here. Teams that estimate and start going, oh geez, our velocity is really 20, not 25, then they start to self-correct. Same thing up here. The more of these experiments you do, the more you're like, okay, I guess a 25% improvement in registration rate isn't realistic for this one change. And then our job, as I said, is to find these higher ROI ideas. And I think really good product people can work with the developers. There's almost always 80-20 at play. You don't need to build the whole thing to get most of the value. So you can shave off some of the cost, the investment, and get most of that value that you can do. And again, I just recommend in the book, I actually have like a 3x3, just high, medium, low. If these numbers are seem too fuzzy, then just do high, medium, low. And as a team, just put your ideas on sticky notes and put them in whichever of those 9 squares you think matters, where it belongs, right? And then you can basically get the priority that you should pursue these ideas in with the highest ROI, and then going down on diminishing returns. And our goal basically is to figure out what are those critical few metrics. Out of all those metrics we could focus on, which one offers the biggest upside? How many resources is it going to take to move that needle on the gauge, right? And based on moving the needle this much, we know from the equation of the business it's going to have this much of a revenue impact. And you want to say, okay, great, let's look across all these metrics, which one's going to offer the highest ROI opportunity? And when you do this, you typically end up with one of 3 scenarios for each metric. The first is what I call a good ROI scenario. And what I've got here is a graph of return and investment. The yellow dot is where we are today. And the line represents, hey, if we execute against the best ideas, that's the kind of return and the value improvement we can expect to see over time, right? So down here, with a little bit of investment, we can get a pretty good improvement in return or value. The second case is bad ROI. So we've got the same curve, it's just that the dot where we are today is up here now. So it's, we can put in a lot of investment and not get much return, right? So those are the 2 most common cases that you see. There is a third case that you don't necessarily see a lot of, but you do see it, especially if you haven't started applying these techniques much. These opportunities exist, where with a little bit of investment, by analyzing the problem and really seeing what's going on with the causality that's there, you can have a big improvement in the return. And so I call these silver bullet opportunities. And as I said, they're most commonly found if you haven't started doing metrics optimization. You start finding this low-hanging fruit that has this better than good returns. All right, let me share a couple of case studies to bring this home. So this first one actually is from Intuit. I was working on a product, and we basically had kind of a long registration process. We basically had to take one registration process for our website, which wasn't that long, and then we were actually offering an online financial service. And so it had a lot of questions it had to ask for regulatory reasons. We put those 2 together. And we tried to do the best we could. We actually launched this thing in 9 months. It was a very aggressive timeline. We hit it. And so then we started tracking, well, great, what percentage of people that started signing up actually finished signing up for their account? And so here we were tracking it. This is actually abandonment rate. So what percentage of people didn't finish? What percentage of people left, basically, right? And you can see the data is a little noisy. It's 7-day moving average. But basically, about 60% of people weren't getting through. It was such a long process, too many screens and questions, that they were not. And so we weren't happy with that result. We were glad we got our product out in time. We're glad it wasn't higher, but we wanted to make it better. As a team, we thought we could improve it, right? And in general, that was the conversion rate. In general, a conversion rate is a term that's used a lot. All it means is basically, hey, if you take the number of people that were actually exposed to the ability to take some action and call that 100%, the conversion rate X is just what percentage of the people that could have taken the action actually did it, right? Bought something or signed up for something, things like that. So you can track a lot of different conversion rates. And in fact, in this multi-step process, the first thing we did is said, okay, great, let's track the drop-off of each step here so that we can apply this idea of, hey, what's going to offer the biggest upside potential, right? Where do we think this, if we're going to go and try to improve something in this process, where should we focus our attention? So here's percentage of users starting with 100, dropping off at each of these different steps. So imagine you're the product manager, and this is the data you have. Where would you focus your efforts on improving? Yeah, where there's the biggest drop-off, right? So not knowing anything else, just where there's the biggest gap, that's what I call the upside potential. Just kind of makes sense to focus on that, right? And it wouldn't make sense, for example, this one is not that big a drop-off, so it wouldn't make sense to go chasing after that, right? Or this one here, right? This is probably the first one, and this is probably the second one. So yeah, so we focused on the biggest drop. And so we kind of peeled the onion and double-clicked and said, okay, let's actually analyze the UI and the flow there and see what's going on. And so basically, people would come in to open an account, and they either had an account with our website already in which they could just sign in, or they were completely new and they had to register from scratch to get an account, right? So then there's 44%, 56%. If you went down the registration path, we saw the analytics basically that like here, 45% of the people that went down this path dropped off. And to kind of have a global comparison point, we then just multiplied it back of the total, how many people dropped off, right? Back on the sign-in flow, not surprisingly, a lot of people didn't know their password. Like we needed them to authenticate. We couldn't just kind of authenticate them in from their cookies because it was now a financial services site, so they had to remember it. So 17% of people got tripped up there, 10% of total. And then because we were a financial services site, we actually had higher security password security requirements now. So even if you remembered your password, if it wasn't secure enough, you had to go change it, right? And so 20% of people had to go dropped off in that whole change password flow. And so we had really good analytics of what was going on. So again, we peeled the onion using quant, and now we can look and say, great, where should we focus? So what's the number one opportunity to focus on here? Yeah, 20% of total, right? That's number one, that's number two, that's number three, probably if we had to prioritize them, right? Now, we've kind of taken quantitative as far as we can. I don't know why those 20% of people aren't getting through the registration process. I don't know why 10% of people are dropping off and forgot password. I don't know why, right? So now we had to switch from Spock to Oprah, and we went and did some usability studies and watched people go through. And that's how we found the whys behind it, right? And so, and it turned out there were a couple use cases for there were certain users that were in a certain bucket of high percentage users, and they were like by attacking 3 use cases and making some tweaks and improvements and enhancements, we basically figured we could make a big impact. And so we basically, for 2 months, worked on that basically, and then we launched out the new improvement and released the new design, and it basically got 37% improvement. Now obviously we wanted to get even better than that, but that was pretty good for after 2 months just kind of talking to some users and making some fixes basically. So that's the idea, that's the lean analytics process. And in general, if you've got a multi-step conversion, there's a funnel visualization can be a very powerful way to see what's going on. This is from Google Analytics where you can see, hey, people are coming into the shopping cart, 77% of people get to the next thing, 89 get to the next one, 87. The other cool thing is it shows you, hey, when they drop off, where do they go? Where are they going? So you can see where people are going, where they're dropping off, where they're coming from. So that's a pretty common way to look at a multi-step conversion process. The second case study I want to share is from Friendster. I was the head of product at Friendster back in the day. And when I joined, it was a 50-person startup. And I came into the building, and everyone, basically, I was like, what do you think we should focus on? And everyone pretty much said, we need to focus on viral growth. Like, we're not really monetizing, so we can't afford to buy users, so we need to have viral user acquisition. So there was a lot of good consensus on that. And I said, great, what have you guys done so far? Nothing. So no one had tracked any metrics on it yet. Everyone believed it was the highest ROI opportunity, but nobody had actually done anything. So I did step one and said, great, what metrics are we going to track? Right? And I had to figure that out so that we could, from there, then identify where's the biggest opportunity. So I basically created, this is back in 2004, the viral loop metrics. I said, great, if we're going to get, basically viral growth means our active users are inviting their friends who then come and sign up. So it starts out with active users. How many of those do we have? They invite their friends, right? And their prospective users, they get an email. They either click on that email, invitation email, or they don't. If they click on the invitation email, they get to our registration page. They either get through that or they don't. If they do get through it, they become users, a certain percentage which are active. So this was basically the framework I was going to put my metrics on. And again, I wanted to do ratio metrics. So I said, great, what metrics can I use? I'm going to create a ratio metric here of what percentage of users are active, right? Not all of them are active. For the active users, what percentage of them are actually inviting their friends? Not all of them are inviting their friends. And there's actually a secondary metric here because when you invite your friends, you don't just have to invite 1 or 5. You can pick how many you want to invite. So there's how many, when they invite their friends, how many do they invite? For the email, there's just an invitation click-through rate on the email. And then on the registration, there was a registration conversion rate. right? So these 5 metrics, those are the 5 metrics that I used, that I started out. We weren't tracking them at all. So I defined these metrics, and then we started tracking them. And multiplied together, they determine your viral ratio. And let's pretend you're the head of product for Friendster back then, and this is what you had. Think about which metric do you think offers the highest ROI opportunity? Let's make it simpler. Instead of 5, let's go down to 3. And please vote. Please vote. Which one do you think about which one of these? Percentage of users sending invites, invites percentage, or conversion rate. Well, I know you don't have a lot of data. Which one do you think would you focus on? Who would focus on percentage of users sending invites? A couple people. Who would focus on invites per sender? And who would focus on conversion rate? Okay. I want to set this up because, and I kind of said, I didn't show you the baseline values, but the reason I do this is to show you the power of baseline values. Here's the baseline values. So this one was at 15%. Invites per sender was at 2.3. Conversion rate was at 85. Why don't we revote now that we have new information? Who would focus on percentage of users sending invites as their top metric now? Nobody switched from, okay. And who would focus on invites per sender? And who would focus on conversion rate? Okay, usually a lot of the conversion rate people switch to the invites, percentage of users sending invites. Just by knowing that number, right? Just by knowing nothing else, knowing that this is at 85 and that's at 15, right? And this is, again, the power of the upside potential. So actually, there were a fair number of people that changed their vote from C. It's the upside potential of a metric. Let's go back. Remember I said metrics are like those gauges? Registration process yield. It has a minimum value of 0, it has a max value of 100. Where are we today? We're at 85%. Even if we have the best team in the world and we execute perfectly, what's the most we can move that up? 15 percentage points, right? And if we express it from where we're at today, it's 18%, right? So that's the power of just knowing it's 85. It's like, wow, less likely to focus on that versus not knowing that. The second one is also a percentage, so it goes from 0 to 100. Where are we at today? We're at 15%. How much headroom is there? I'm not saying we could get it, but just from a gap analysis, like how much is it? 85%, right? Divided from where we are today, that's 570%. That seems a lot better. Again, I'm not saying I know for a fact we can achieve that, but all other things being equal, it seems a lot better. The third one, average number of invites sent per sender. What's the min value for this one? What's the max value for this one? Infinity.
That's it. Infinity.
Infinity. Anyone have another answer?
And you've got an 85% conversion rate, so.
Any other answers on the max value for this one? How many people in the world? It's not infinity, right? It may feel like infinity, but it's not. So usually people get excited, they go, infinity! And then they're like, okay, it's 7 billion. And then it's like, well, how many are on the internet? And then you get down to, well, how many friends do people really have on average and things like that. But still, so I don't really know, but I know we're at 2.3. So we have question mark divided by 2.3. What would that number have to be higher than 570%, right? The average person, there's like sociology research that says like they have about 150 friends on average, right? So if that's 150, then it's way more than 570%, right? So that's what I mean by the upside potential of a metric. And is anyone feeling a sense of deja vu from something I said earlier? Remember how I said that there were 3 different profiles, right? There's a good one and a bad one. This one is a bad one, right? Registration process, we're already 85%, right? So it's hard to envision how we're going to really get a high ROI there. Percentage of users sending an invite, we're at 15%. So it's easy to envision that we could have some ideas that are going to move it. How about that third one, average number of invites per sender? It doesn't have this kind of percentage max. Might even be infinite, who knows, right? But it seems like it could be one of these silver bullet ones that I was telling you about. We don't know for a fact yet, but it seems like it could be one of those, right? So this example shows you those 3 use cases. Question? Yeah?
So in those examples, wouldn't it seems like there's a missing piece of data there that would be easy to get that actually would change those votes again if you knew what maybe industry average was.
It's the first social network. No data, no industry average. Right? You don't know. And that happens a lot. A lot of consultants go, oh, benchmarks, just get benchmarks. Have you ever you're a PM, have you ever tried to go get a benchmark for a comparable product? It's really hard. You may get some rough ranges, back to what you're saying. Your competitors certainly aren't publishing what they are, or sharing it. So it can be tough. So benchmarks can get overused or people try to lean on it. What's best, in my opinion, is compare against yourself over time and try to improve over time. But if you can get a benchmark, great. That'd be great. Yeah. So for that reason, I wasn't going to focus on this one. This one looked good, but this one looked even better to me, right? I didn't have a lot of data to go on. I just kind of said, hey, we're at 2.3, right? The other thing is, a couple things is, we had tried to get more people to invite their friends. Trust me, we had a bunch of invite buttons and links all over the place. We had already kind of done a little bit. I didn't tell you guys this, but we had done some of that. So for whatever reason, 85% of people just said, I don't want to invite my friends, right? Whereas here, people were inviting their friends. This was, instead of trying to get people who weren't inviting their friends to invite their friends, this was just about getting people that are inviting their friends to invite more. So we weren't trying to completely change behavior, we were just trying to increase the behavior, right? So that was the other thing. Changing user behavior is really hard. The other thing is, again, you wouldn't know this, but back in 2004, the way you invited your friends is you had to actually type out each email address. Right? So no wonder it was only 2.3. After 2 or 3, people got tired of typing their friends and they moved on. So that's why we focused. For those reasons, we said, all right, let's go focus on that. So then we went into the metrics optimization loop for that one and said, great, let's brainstorm what are all the different ways that we can improve the number of invites being sent out per sender, and then for each of these ideas, how much do we think it's going to move the needle on the metric, and how much dev time do we think it's going to take, right? And the top ROI idea that we had, this is more common now, obviously, but back in 2004, at the first social network, we decided to build an address book importer so that you could just kind of put in your email credentials. It would bring in all your friends, your infinite friends, your 500 friends, 200 friends, and you could pick which ones you want to invite, push a button, and boom, right? So would really reduce the effort, make it a lot easier for people to invite their friends. So that's what we decided to pursue. Now it turns out within that, you have to actually build that importer for each, there's custom development work for each email provider, Yahoo, Gmail, Hotmail. So then we had to do, again, the upside potential. We looked at our database and said, great, what's the most popular email provider so that we do the MVP on that to see what it does before we go all in. And it was Yahoo. It was 2004, so it was Yahoo. Yeah. So we said, great, we're going to build a Yahoo address book importer. The dev said, yeah, it's going to take me about a week and a half. We said, that sounds good, let's do it. So here's the before. So again, we're tracking our baseline, right? And this is 2.3, right? Again, so when somebody invites their friends, how many they invite. This is a 7-day average, so it takes a little while for the data to catch up to where it is. But we launched the feature, and basically it more than doubled. So it ended up being a silver bullet feature, right? So by a week and a half of one developer, we more than doubled this, was translated directly because of the equation directly into over twice as many new users that we were getting from it. So I was pretty excited about that. Now back then when I did it like a before and after. We hadn't built like a robust A/B testing. So the best practice today is to kind of run those two alternatives side by side so that there aren't any exogenous factors that can be impacting that. Frankly, I think people sometimes overemphasize the importance of that. If you need to just do it before and after, as long as there's nothing crazy going on, it should be okay. But the purest way to do it is an A/B test. This is an example of the kind of output you would get. Say you're running a bunch of different options. It would show you kind of where's the average and what's the confidence band. So these two are clearly performing better. These three are clearly performing poorly, and these are in between, right? So it's a way to kind of get that, again, that behavioral quantitative data to see which one's better. So again, to sum up the lean analytics process, start out by figuring out what are your metrics, see where your baseline values are. You saw from that one question I asked how important the baseline values are. Look across them, pick the one you think has the biggest upside potential, highest ROI. Pick that metric, and then figure out with your team, brainstorm all the ways you can improve it. Figure out the one you think has the highest ROI. Design, implement it, analyze, launch, learn and iterate basically. So with that, I'd be happy. I know we answered some questions. I'm happy to answer some more questions from everybody. Yes?
How do you know, or how do you pick the top metric or the metric that you want to work on?
It's based on your team's, that ROI graph that we said, there might be uncertainty, but it's your team saying, okay, what do we think the value is going to create and what's the effort? And just calculate, you estimate the ROI for all your ideas. So you can throw all your ideas in a spreadsheet and you can say the return is this and the I is this, and you can put them up on a whiteboard and do high, medium, lows and see what comes out as the highest ROI based on your team's best thinking and evidence that you have. Now actually we have a mic for questions too. If you could just raise your hand, Brian will bring you a mic so everybody can hear it. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you elaborate elaborate more on enterprise level product? I think a lot of this applies really directly to consumer product, but I work on an enterprise product. We'd love to hear more about what adjustments to make when you're applying this methodology.
Yeah, I honestly think there's more. I get this question a lot for both of my talks, and I think there's more similarities than differences, right? I think that one key difference is I think that A/B testing gets used a lot and kind of glorified. And if you have 100 million users, your B2C website with 100 million users, it's easy to say, hey, let's just launch this to 1% and see what happens. So typically, if you're in B2B and you have fewer number of customers, you have say 12 clients or 20 clients, it may not be feasible or as easy to do that. So, but there's still a lot of other stuff that you can do. I think tracking retention is critical. If you want to double click on that, then what you can do is actually track not just global usage or retention, but feature by feature, what's the usage, right? So if you take your active users and say, hey, in August, we had 1,000 active users, just take all of your key features and say how many used it. And so say 500 used your CRM feature. Well, you'd say, okay, 50% of our active users use CRM. And you can do that percentage for all your features, and you'll find the features that people are using more or less, and that'll provide a lot of good insight into where they're getting the most value, right? So I think most, the R startup metric for Pirate certainly applies. Figuring out the equation of your business. Almost always that churn rate or retention is going to be a really important metric as well, and that's where usage or engagement will be kind of a leading indicator of retention, in my opinion. So I think most of those same principles apply for B2B as well. You just may not be able to do as much A/B testing as some of these other folks. Yeah?
So a lot of the metrics are negatively correlated. So if you crank one up, you'll suffer somewhere else. I'll start over.
All right.
So a lot of metrics are negatively correlated. So
That's right.
If you go up in one, the other one will suffer. So one technique we've used is to pick a metric and then pick a counter metric. So you can do one at the expense of
Yes.
the other.
Yeah.
And that seems to work as a way to not go too high on acquisition at the expense of retention.
Yeah. Basically, you need to identify what your key metrics are. And so if your baseline value for retention is say 90 days out is 15%, and you do some acquisition stuff, and all of a sudden that gets better, but it negatively impacts that. Yeah, you want to have that global dashboard of your key metrics. I saw this happen once with one company I was consulting to. They had a acquisition team or conversion team, and they had a retention team. And the conversion team basically, they basically changed the UI to make the button that they wanted you to click bigger and the other one smaller. It kind of it was all these UI, and it's like, wow, look, the conversion rate went up. And they were like, look what we did. We made the conversion rate go up, right? Because they were given that sole metric. And then, 30 days later, the retention team whoa, what happened? Because they lost it, right? So one other technique is to figure out, okay, we've got this whack-a-mole situation between these two metrics. There's almost always a way to say, what's the higher level metric that encapsulates both of those, basically. So it would be number of customers that we have after 90 days would have just solved all that stuff. Because even though you acquired them, you wouldn't have retained them as much, right? So that can come up. So I think what you want to do, teams that get really sophisticated, what they will say is they'll say, okay, we're going to do this acquisition and enhancement initiative, and we expect it to improve this much, say decrease cost per acquisition by 15%. But what they'll say is, in order for this experiment to be a success, it cannot decrease retention. They'll say what it can't decrease, the other key metrics, right? Revenue, retention, things like that. Customer complaints. So that's what they usually do. They set those constraints. And then even if the experiment achieves its positive intended effect on the one, if it has a negative effect on others, they won't then roll it out. They'll A/B test it and they'll say, nope, it didn't work out. Yeah. Yeah, Brian's got them right here, Mike.
In your first example, you talked about Intuit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you honed in on one of the metrics to kind of double click on, and based on quantitative analysis, and then you kind of switched from Spock to Oprah.
That's right.
So how did you figure out how much quantitative analysis to do? How many usability testing sessions did you have to do to feel confident and see a pattern that these are the changes that I'm relatively confident that will change?
Sure. And this is the question I get when I talk about the Oprah. This is the spot question that I get basically. And the bottom line is, it's like that person asked me. It's like, do we need to do 10,000 usability tests to really be sure, right? So, it's if you do the formal statistical significance calculations, it's not going to work out. But if I show my registration page or my forgot password flow to 10 people, and 8 of them run into major problems, is my conclusion, these 8 people are probably not representative. I don't have a big enough sample size. I need to go talk to more, right? It's probably a problem there, right? So you just kind of, use that kind of averages and you say, geez, right? Conversely, if 9 out of 10 people get through it just fine, it's probably not a big deal. So you can just, I call it semi-quant or quant on qual. Like you can do that. You can kind of say, we talked to 10 people and 7 couldn't figure it out. It's okay to say 70% of people couldn't figure it out. Is it exactly 70%? No, I'm not saying it's just, you know what I mean? So, so that's kind of how I recommend doing it. So, talk to enough people. You'll see patterns. If there's a real usability issue, multiple people will trip on it and you'll be like, okay, and if those people are tripping on it, other people probably are too. Yeah?
Would you base a number that you decide to test for usability testing on, I'm not used to this microphone.
You didn't bring yours? Okay. Can we get her a better microphone, please? Okay. That's right.
Would you base it on the user personas, or would you base it on people outside of the user personas?
It kind of depends on what we're doing. In general, I showed you that pyramid. I'm a big believer that you should test with your actual actual customers or target customers. Yeah, so I don't know why. Yeah, I mean, I would do it on the personas. In fact, that case, the conversion optimization case that I showed you, we actually had 9 different, they weren't personas per se, but people that were in different buckets. Like, oh, these guys, they already registered and they had a high security password. They were getting through fine. Okay, these guys registered, but they had a low security password. There's the ones running into issues A and B. These guys, so we kind of categorized, we had 9 categories of users, believe it or not, it's kind of complicated. And then we categorized the top 1 to 3 issues that each of them were running into and kind of quantified. We ballparked it and said, oh, we think 20% of people are running into this. So that's kind of how we did that analysis. So, but in general, I recommend, you test with real users. If you're trying to improve usability or conversion, then usually talking to the real people is good. If you have a new product, then you don't have customers. You're talking to who you think the prospective customers are, what the persona is for them. And if you have multiple personas, which I think is part of your question, then you should test. If you have a reason to believe, if it's a pure usability issue, does it matter if you're SMB 100K revenue or 500K revenue to figure out a registration form? It doesn't probably, right? So it's just just a human factor kind of thing. So in that case, I wouldn't worry about it. But for other things, for product market fit, you might want to talk to each persona. Yeah. One in front. And maybe we'll take one more after this, and then we'll give out the books. And I'm happy to stick around and do questions one-on-one.
Dan, thanks very much for your presentation.
Sure.
It's excellent. One of the questions I have is, your methodology and analysis, who handles that in an organization and who's driving those decisions? Because I see in all kinds of organizations, all sizes, there's a lot of confusion because different departments have access to different data.
Yeah.
And so are you espousing maybe that this product manager in charge of growth really can oversee all of this and help to gather teams and make these sorts of decisions based on data? It's kind of fuzzy for me. In some organizations that are smaller, I guess it's easier to achieve that. In larger ones, you've got these.
Are you in a larger organization?
I'm not in any
one
at the moment.
Okay, got it.
I'm looking for one at the moment. So.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, so I think that, like I said, there's a maturity model here, right? You go to a Zynga or a Facebook and they have, like a growth team, they have an analytics team. It's just it's baked in their DNA. It's just how they do things, right? Other places, they may aspire to do some of these things and not quite be there yet, right? So I think as far as who can do it, I think it often falls into a product management role. As you mentioned, for growth focus, there tend to be increasingly In fact, Sean Ellis, who's the guy who coined the term growth hacker, he gave a talk this spring, or it's his second talk. His talk before that, he was about the increasing overlap of product and growth. It's on our YouTube channel. Because I think that people are realizing you can't just decouple acquisition and growth from product. It doesn't make sense because so much for online products, it's baked in. So, so you do see product growth teams. In smaller organizations, they may not have that role as a dedicated role. It may be the PM. Sometimes you have a data team or an analytics team. That team can live in different places. Sometimes it lives under PM. Maybe it lives under Eng. Maybe it lives under its own team kind of thing. And then you brought up a good point, which is just, even if you've got someone responsible, like where does the data live? Who's responsible for the data? And that's where it gets more technical. And that stuff ends up being, if you're using a third-party tool like Mixpanel or Google Analytics, then maybe the dev team is responsible for installing it, and then someone is administering it, but then it's like you can do what you need to do, and then it's all about how do you add new events and new tracking over time. But if you're doing internal tools or some like Tableau or something where it's just not as easy, it's like how transparent, how democratized is the data and information, and how self-service is it, right? And so the places that are really good at this, they democratize the data and they make it self-serve so that anytime you want to get some data, you don't have to go bug somebody and wait for a report and all this jazz. So those are some general patterns that I see for people that are doing it well. Yeah. All right, one last question and then we'll give some books away.
So a lot of this assumes that the product market fit is solely dependent on the product itself. So how do you differentiate when you're defining those metrics between product problems and execution problems, i.e. salespeople problem in the sales process, problem in the customer service process, right? Because it could look like a product problem when it's really a people problem.
Yeah. Well, I showed the product market fit pyramid very quickly, but it's the fit between the product and the market. So part of it, we've talked about a couple times, is one way to segment this stuff we talked about segmenting retention curves by customer type. You can even segment conversion rates by customer type. You can segment any of these metrics that we talked about by customer type, and you may find key differences there. So part of what's going on, what's going on is you may get clearer and refine who you're targeting in the market, and that could improve product market fit over time. There could be marketing or sales execution issues. In the book, I don't have time to get into it. The slides are right behind these about how you get better in marketing over time and you improve product market fit by doing a better job on marketing and sales and knowing how to talk about your product. Even messaging we didn't even talk about, right? You may have a great product, but you may just not know how to tell people why it's so amazing. I have a separate talk actually on messaging market fit. That is a term that I coined that you may do a great job on your product, but the messaging may not be good. And then you mentioned customer service. Yeah, so that's like, it's like the kind of, there's other factors that can impact it for sure. Yeah, there's definitely other factors. Cool. All right, well, thanks a lot. Let's switch over and give out some books and the ticket.